Hello and welcome to Faith Matters. This is the programme where we look at Liverpool life, Merseyside life, through the prism of faith and belief. You can email your comments and suggestions to us at faithmatters@baytvliverpool.com. We'd love to hear from you and any suggestions you've got. Our guests in the studio today are John and Mari Manuel. I pronounced that right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
You're from Together for the Harvest. Welcome.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Let me begin this short interview with the TFH mission statement, which I've taken from your website. And it is this: TFH, Together for the Harvest, is an association of churches, organisations and individuals that are working together for a spiritual harvest and social transformation. TFH is made up of people who have agreed to work together to see the gospel reach every man, woman and child in the Mersey region. That's a tall order. That's a bold aim. So what kind of churches, Mari, what kind of churches and Christians are associated with TFH? Give us a flavour.
Well, there's lots of different people from lots of different kinds of denominations, from Anglicans, Baptists, Free Church, Evangelicals. But all the people that are part of Together for the Harvest are really interested in what you've just read out, in reaching the people of Liverpool with the good news. So there'll be people that will work together on projects such as Christians Against Poverty, or wanting to work together in local outreaches into the local area. So really people that want to evangelise with the good news of Jesus.
Okay, so some people see TFH. I mean, some of our viewers won't have heard of TFH, but some will have done. Some people see you as a kind of representing the Pentecostal, the Spirit-filled church. Is that correct, or are you broader than that? I mean, you sounds from what you said there that you are broader than that.
I would say we're definitely broader than that, but some churches are noisier than others, and speak out more vocal. Really, Together for the Harvest attracts and is designed to attract those who have a real intent to reach out. So inevitably, we are more suited to those churches that want to be outreaching, more evangelical, and more committed to reaching the whole of our district and region with the good news. So we aren't excluding churches that are quieter or have less of an attitude of evangelism, but that tends to be the majority of our makeup. And there are churches that really have a desire to reach out, churches that recognize the need, that we have an imperative as Christians to reach out, and also that recognize that working together is more effective. And not everybody sees that. If you've been brought up in a church, in a denomination that is very focused on that congregation, it's a bit of a step change to say, oh, well, we need to connect with people of other denominations. When we came to Liverpool only 26 years ago, lots of denominational groups didn't talk to each other. So things have changed dramatically. So now people work together, they see the benefit of being seen to be together in the same high street at a local level. So many more people.
So a lot has changed over the years then.
A lot has changed, yeah.
And I know you work with Churches Together, which is more of a mainstream kind of organisation, but you do things together with Churches Together. The month of mission that's just passed, that was a kind of joint effort?
Yeah, I would not say that they're more mainstream, but they are more the traditional churches.
Yeah, okay.
And Churches Together was really set up to start building this relationship between denominational groups and to have a basis for coming together. So Churches Together never was really set up to do projects or to unify at street level, although that was probably the dream, back 30 and 40 years ago. And so they really paved the way legally for churches to work together and build relationships at sort of bishop and hierarchy level. Together for the Harvest is much more about the local church.
The grassroots.
Yeah, thing. Baptist church working with a Methodist church and an Anglican in a very local community.
And I know you've got personal connections with the Maranatha community.
Yeah.
Which is a Catholic. Is that a Catholic
No,
organisation? It's
they've
not?
kind of got that bit of a label because they've been one of the groups that's been very keen to work with Roman Catholics and all denominations over the last 40
Right,
years.
okay.
And I said things have changed. You know, when we moved to Liverpool 25 years ago, evangelicals would not work with Catholics, and Catholics would not be interested in working with evangelicals. And at that time, Maranatha was working in Northern Ireland, you know, really frontline stuff.
Where it was really necessary.
It was literally, you know, they were in the firing line, literally sometimes. They got caught up in the middle of gang fights and they would just pray. So they were really on the front line, the boundary of this whole thing. And that really started with the founder, Dennis Wrigley, praying and saying, how do we get all denominations together? And he felt the Lord saying, well, go to where it's toughest. So Maranatha aren't a Catholic organization, but they have got probably the longest heritage of working across that particular divide. And God bless them. You know, the Maranatha community have done fantastic work in that, breaking down barriers.
Okay, what do you mean by a spiritual harvest in your
Right.
mission statement? What is this spiritual harvest you're looking for?
Okay, well, our mission statement refers to a spiritual harvest and social transformation, and the two are wedded together. You know, you can't imagine one without the other, but it's to identify that we want to see people actually come to know Jesus Christ personally. So the spiritual harvest, you know, Jesus talked about, look, the fields are white to harvest. You just need to get out there and tell people the good news. The kingdom has come. So we see a spiritual harvest of reaching every man, woman, and child with this amazing good news that Jesus is alive, he died for our sins, and we can get to know him personally. I know him personally, I believe you do, and that is the heart of the Christian message. So that creates personal transformation, personal spiritual transformation. And so our harvest is to reach 1.7 million people in the Mersey region with this great news. And when they do, that's the harvest.
So to tell them the great news, but they've got to the good news, they've got to respond to it, haven't they?
Absolutely.
It demands
yeah.
something of them.
So one form of our mission statement has been that Together for the Harvest wants to reach every man, woman, and child in the Mersey region with a credible presentation of the gospel, giving them an opportunity to accept or reject it. And the only way we can do that is together. You know, 1.7 million people, you started off by saying that's a bold ambition.
Yeah.
Actually, when you do the numbers and you say, well, if every church got involved, it's not that difficult. And really, I'd love to see it before I've got grandchildren. And since my daughter just got married, that might only be months away. So we're on the clock here.
Okay, okay. Mari, so you do all the hard work, do you? I mean, John leads Together for the Harvest, but what's your
The main
role?
thing I do is that I'm the editor of the magazine Harvest.
Right, okay.
So that's really a vehicle that we...
You've got a copy there?
Yeah, I've got some copies here. This is our latest copy here.
She's always got copies.
I've always got copies. I've got copies from the past as well.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this magazine for about 15 years, and it's sort of developed. It used to be called just Together, or TFH News, I think it used to be called.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, we rebranded and we call it Harvest Magazine, and it's basically a vehicle for the church to use to promote what's going on across the region. So that might be where churches are working together on a project. So, for example, if they're doing an outreach, or maybe Christians Against Poverty, for example. There's several churches in Bootle working together, so we cover that story. Other things where people are working together in an area, reaching out into the community. And then, of course, we cover the things that we do, the big things like what we've done in the past, the Heal Our Land, Saints in the Stadium, Festival of Hope.
These are big events.
They're the big events that TFH has sort of worked to promote and to get churches to work together, and I cover those as well. So the idea is really to encourage the church for the church to see what other parts of the church is doing. So if we've got this vision of one church across the region, then somebody in Runcorn can see what somebody else in St Helens is doing, for example, and be encouraged about that. And also it's news, but also it promotes it, so we can get the information out there for people to be involved. We had something about the NHS last time, so you know that just lets people know what's going on as well. So
Okay, great. So, what about you're sharing the good news? Are you doing? Some people would say this is proselytism. What would you say to that?
Well, it's an interesting word, that, isn't it? It's become a loaded word. It sort of implies undue pressure or manipulation or an unfair pressure to accept a doctrine or a belief. Originally, it was just a technical word for trying to persuade people to believe what Christians believed, and it's now applied to political groups and all kinds.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we would take a very positive view that say, yes, we are proselytizing, but in the positive sense. We've got a great message. Yeah. We've seen lives change. We've seen addicts released from addiction. We've seen people crippled by debt released into a life of peace and harmony. We've seen broken families come together. What you were asking earlier about transformation, the good news is that when Jesus Christ starts to lead people's life and they turn away from their old life, great changes follow. Families come together. Divorced couples come together again. Lives are rebuilt and renewed. When we're changed internally, there's an opportunity for external things to be renewed.
So the personal transformation leads to societal transformation.
Absolutely, and history shows that in abundance. We live in a moment, I think, where a lot of people have been convinced by the general media pressure that Christian heritage is something to be ashamed of.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, not because I disagree with what you're saying, but because we've come to our commercial break. So we'll come back to that question after the break. Great, thank you. Hello and welcome back to Faith Matters with John and Mari Manuel from Together for the Harvest. We're having a very animated discussion there, which I had to cut short. John, coming back to that question of social transformation, we were saying that personal transformation in terms of the gospel, Jesus changing people's lives, leads to society being changed. I mean, we've seen that in history, haven't we, through the centuries?
Yeah, you really touched a button there with me, because this is something that really animates me and excites me. We're living in a moment where the whole Christian heritage is being belittled and minimized. And in fact, if we go back 1,000 years to King Alfred, and then the Magna Carta, which we're about to celebrate, the 800th anniversary in just a few days. Magna Carta established things that are relevant just in the general election we just had. The rule of law applies to everyone in the land, whether they be kings, bankers, or peasants. The whole concept of the Christian framework for rules and the right of people to have property and for marriages to be honored created an environment for people to prosper in business and for homes to prosper. So the heritage that we have comes out of personal conviction, whether it's John Wesley bringing a social transformation gospel and a personal salvation intertwined, or whether it's William Wilberforce dealing with the slave trade based on a Christian conviction. He really got animated and motivated when he had a personal conversion. And he was inspired by John Newton, a slave trader, who was so inspired.
Who was connected to Liverpool, of course.
Of course, just down the road. So, when people get personally changed internally, their priorities change. And, previous Bishop David Shepherd, very successful in life, in cricket, and got a conviction to come and to be a Christian minister and became Bishop of Liverpool. So throughout history, people have been internally changed and then gone and done good.
Yeah.
And even in this area, the Reverend Hobson, who labored every hour that God gave him breath to visit and to care for people and encourage people, because he was internally changed, and he saw many people come to faith.
And we're seeing that. We had the guys from the Eden Merseyside team on, Alan Finnegan and the
and that's a modern example right here and now.
And right here and now in Merseyside.
Yeah, that very exciting.
People's lives are being changed here and now. Give us some other examples of churches that are connected to TFH that are doing things, projects that you're
Yeah, it's not just
sponsoring?
churches, of course. It's organisations and even business leaders. But yeah, when people are really inspired, when they've personally changed, they really want to get involved and to do things for social transformation. So Claire Morgan's over at Y Kids, really doing a lot with schools.
In Bootle, that is.
Yeah, in Bootle, and young people all across, and in Kensington as well, and in other areas. And there's other things. I mentioned Christians Against Poverty, really making such a big difference in eradicating debt in people's lives. There's schools work, helping people with addictions, and this is all. Most of the people that work in the church across the region are volunteers. So you've got the people who are giving hours to food banks, just doing. Reaching out to people with...
look at Liverpool Lighthouse,
yeah.
transforming Anfield.
Yep, and job clubs, they do a lot of work with people, unemployed people. And then there's all the other stuff, such as just the fun stuff, like the children's clubs or afternoon clubs, luncheon clubs for older people. So there's an absolute wealth of stuff that's going out.
Prison ministry.
Prison work, yeah.
Yeah, homework clubs. Just encouraging kids to do better at school.
Yeah.
And then they go on and do better in life. So this is all for the good. It's not just about getting people on rows of seats on a Sunday morning.
No. And this is what the church has always done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time the church doesn't advertise what they're doing, so it's not been very joined up. But I know there's been efforts recently to really sort of list out what the church is doing, so that there are, a comprehensive list of activities that are going on. I know the TFH was involved in that at one time, making lists of all the activities, all the outreach type things, all the social stuff that was going on. We call it, in TFH, we call it Accelerating Community Engagement, ACE. And in the magazine, I try and always have a page of ACE activities, so where we are engaging with the community.
And are you prepared as an organisation, and do you think the church is prepared to work with secular agencies and organisations?
Yeah, that's a wide open question, and of course it depends. So when we did Merseyfest in 2005, we had 70,000 people over 2 days in Croxteth Park, 200 churches from Merseyside and beyond doing projects for the 10 days beforehand. And all the agencies were involved. The fire department put on a fire display with confiscated fireworks, and the police were very involved in helping with local projects. A lot of them were engaging with young people. The police wanted to be actively involved in that, so they got involved. The Liverpool City Council got involved, and we've worked with Liverpool City Council actually with the Capital of Culture bid, and then some of the projects that went on during the year. So there's really no end of involvement with various agencies, whether it's NHS, schools, or the civic authorities. You know yourself, we've been involved with the police and probation,
Yep.
and really encouraging Christians to be more aware of what goes on through the criminal justice system, whether they want to get involved and support prison ministry. So that involves working with agencies. And sometimes that involves funding, whether that's lottery funding or Liverpool City Council funding.
Yep.
But, always maintaining the fact that the church has its own distinctive convictions and priorities. So some things, the funding wouldn't be available. Historically, the last 20 years, there's been a wariness from government agencies to fund anything with a religious inclination.
Well, why is that?
I think because we've come through, I hope we're coming through, and maybe to the other side of a sort of extreme political correctness, where the idea was secularism rules, so nothing could be funded if it's got a religious content. But actually that damages communities, because right here in Toxteth there are Hindu groups that will benefit their community if they can fund what they're doing. And so it's good for the community for religious groups to get access to some funding. And it doesn't have to be overt proselytizing or evangelism, as we've found with many projects such as street pastors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just serving people on the streets, caring for people who are very vulnerable, whether they are living rough on the streets or clubbing and they've lost some of their wherewithal after a few too many drinks. Just caring for people that are in a vulnerable state. It doesn't have to be, right, and you need to get into church on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's just loving people.
And
And that's the long term.
Churches just don't always meet on Sunday these days either,
No,
do they? Because people have other priorities. So.
Yeah, we're really in a 24-hour 7-day-a-week culture.
Do you think we live in a post-Christendom or post-Christian period?
Well,
What's
you know,
happening?
Keith, that's another whole program. Let's come and talk about post-Christendom. I think essentially we do. You know, in Britain we are living in post-Christendom, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, that where the church thought it ruled by right is not a healthy thing. You know, our message, as Bishop Paul Bayes constantly refers in this city, you know, his theme has been, we're on the edge and we want to get underneath. And, you know, I love that imagery that we're really here to serve and win people, proselytize, evangelize by showing the love of God and caring for people. And some people won't receive that for a long, long time. But we have to love people unconditionally. Some people will never know the love of God, but we've at least been faithful in loving people.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes remaining. I want to ask you this question, which is not on my script, but I think just comes out of what you've just been saying. What is it about the gospel of Jesus Christ that is unique?
Well, you're asking me.
Yeah.
So,
I'll ask both of you.
right, but as a Christian, I have to say that it's because Jesus Christ stands alone in history. He's the one man that came preaching a revelation of God, told everybody that he was going to be put to death for the sins of the world, and then he was going to rise up. And even his own disciples thought, well, surely not, you know. And Peter even said, don't say that. It can't be true. And Jesus really renounced that and said, get behind me, Satan. That's a deceiving thought. And then he did. And he's the only man in history who did that, laid down his own life, then rose up. And of course, the church is founded on the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And many people are concerned, rightly so. What happens in the afterlife? Well, there's only one person who distinctively and clearly explained that we live on this life, there's no reincarnation, we live once, we're going to be judged, and if we're in Christ, the judgment has fallen on him on the cross. And so we can live now in liberty, which releases me to live a full life, and we can live in confidence that in the life to come, we are adopted into his family.
That's great. Okay, we've got 30 seconds. Mari, I'm going to let you have the last word. 20 seconds. How do people get in touch with TFH?
Well, you can pick up these magazines in any of the Christian bookshops. You can email me, harvest@tfh.org.uk. Phone number's in the front there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming on. Great programme, and see you on Faith Matters next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.